Chapter 5 The Omnipotent. Jaden fell as he went through the portal. The mortal looked up to see Gold looking down at him. "Did you have to throw me?" Jaden said as he stood up. "You were taking too long," Gold responded. Jaden gave an indifferent grunt as a reply, before returning to look at his surroundings. He and Gold were in front of the dilapidated building they had entered the day before. The city was eerily silent. Jaden looked up and saw clear skies. "Why is everything so quiet?" Jaden whispered to Gold. The speed guide glanced at the mortal. "What do you think?" Gold said flatly. "Let's just go. The sooner I get you to the Creator, the sooner I can figure out what Auntie's doing." Jaden opened his mouth to voice his agreement, but his stomach grumbled. Both Jaden and Gold looked at the offending organ, before Jaden shrugged. "I appear to be hungry." Jaden supposed that made sense. He hadn't exactly eaten in about a day. Gold let out a sigh. "Fine. What do you want?" Gold asked. Jaden pulled out his phone and pulled up directions to a breakfast house. "Pancakes?" Jaden said, holding up his phone to Gold. "Fine," Gold said, before kneeling down. "Climb on." Jaden climbed up on Gold's back and gripped around Gold's armor. "Is this safe?" Jaden asked. "Not sure. Want to find out?" Gold said, preparing to run. Electricity started to arc across Gold's armor, and Jaden pulled up his hood as he felt his hair start to rise. In a brief blur of motion and a rush of wind, Gold was suddenly in front of the breakfast house. Jaden immediately felt his stomach lurch and dropped off Gold's back and dry heaved into the bushes. "Still hungry?" Gold snarked while stepping out of his armor. Jaden was tempted to punch the deity as he had finished heaving, but decided against that as his stomach felt like an empty pit. "Yep," Jaden responded. The mortal heard Gold sigh as he fiddled with his armor's left arm. "What are you doing?" "Setting this thing to sentry mode," Gold responded, briefly lifting up the left arm. Gold then dropped the arm and took off the helmets. He aimed it at the wall and tapped the top twice. He then placed the helmet back onto the armor and stepped back. Gold's armor flicked around to match the colors of the surrounding area before settling down to match the area perfectly. "Alright, let's go," Gold said, walking past Jaden and entering the diner. Jaden followed Gold into the breakfast place. Once they were seated, the two lapsed into an awkward silence. "So," Jaden started. "So? Your armor. What about it? I'm no tech expert, but I'm pretty sure that technology isn't from this time period." "So what if it is?" "So? Where did you get it? Or, rather, when?" "What is this? 20 questions?" Gold said before taking a sip of his water. "Sure, why not?" Jaden responded, and Gold let out a sigh. "Fine then. The armor should be about 300 years from the future. Also, I wasn't the one who got it. It was given to me." "Who gave it to you?" "That's not how this game works. It's my turn," Gold deflected with a small grin. "The thing that was in your chest. What is it?" "It's called the Corrupted Core. Allegedly, it should give the person possessing it the fighting prowess of a war god, among other things." Jaden gave an abridged version of what the core could do. "What are these other things?" "That's not how this game works," Jaden said, mimicking Gold's tone from before. "Who gave you the armor?" "I'm not answering that," Gold said almost immediately. "You kinda have to. It's part of the rules." "Well, I'm choosing not to answer that. Besides, you'll learn the answer soon enough." "Gold," Jaden said, staring directly at the deity. "Jaden," Gold said, returning the mortal's stare. "Ahem," a third voice entered the conversation. Gold and Jaden turned to look towards their waiter, who was holding their food. "Chocolate chip pancakes," the waiter said, placing the pancakes in front of Jaden. And bacon with Belgian waffle, the waiter said, placing the food in front of Gold. They both thanked the waiter and watched them leave before returning to their stare down. Jaden was the first to concede, as his hunger was starting to get to him. Fine then, keep your little secret, Jaden said, while cutting his pancakes into 4 equal parts. It's your turn, the mortal said, before shoving one part of his food into his mouth. Gold grimaced. The pancakes were only barely smaller than the mortal's head. What's your other half? Gold asked. Jaden looked up and frowned. What's that supposed to mean? You're half human and half something else. When the children put you through the ritual, they said you are now 37.5% divine, which means you weren't a demigod before. Most angels are too stuck up to want to have relationships with mortals nowadays, so I doubt you're part angelic. Also, I didn't have an immediate inclination to stab you, so you're clearly not demonic either, which means you're something else. I want to know what exactly, Gold said. Jaden took a sip of his water and hummed. I'm not answering that, Jaden said. Gold opened his mouth to argue, but remembered he had also declined to answer one of Jaden's questions. Fair enough, Gold conceded. Your turn. When you take me to God, is there anything I should do? Jaden asked. Gold leaned back in his seat and thought about it. I'm not sure how to answer that, Gold admitted. It would be easier to list the things you probably shouldn't do than what you should. Go for it then, Jaden said, before shoveling more of his food into his mouth. First and foremost, don't bow before them. They won't like it at all. It'll make them feel alienated in a way. They also just see bowing as a pathetic gesture. You'll offend them less if you drop dead in front of them, or even spit on them. Oh, the best way to break the ice with God would be to ask if they're omnibenevolent. They find that hilarious for some reason. Though, that might just make them start waxing philosophy. Okay, Jaden said, mentally making a note of that. Your turn. Gold leaned back in his seat and steepled his fingers. Cyrus Amber. What's your connection to him? Gold asked, and Jaden nearly choked on his food. What? The mortal said weakly, after swallowing his food. When the children spoke about Cyrus, you had a strange look. At first, I dismissed it, but when the leader said it was the children who had killed Cyrus, you then said you didn't feel safe. Ergo, you most likely have some connection to Cyrus, Gold said, before leaning back in his seat. A small, smug grin was plastered on his face. Oh. Cyrus was my great-grandfather, Jaden said, holding up a finger for each great. So that makes you, Gold started. Amber Rose, Jaden finished. Ambrosius, Gold said. That's my last name. Ambrosius. That name sounded familiar to Jaden. Are you related to... Jaden started. No relation, Gold said, quickly cutting off the boy. Well, if we're making deductions, have you ever time traveled? And what did you do? Jaden asked. Gold didn't choke on his food. He had dignity. He did, however, raise an eyebrow at that. I can't answer that, Gold said. Why not? Because I'm not allowed to. Okay, but why? Jaden, drop it, Gold said. There was a strange intonation in Gold's voice. Maybe there was something in his throat? Sure, I'll drop it, once you tell me why you can't tell me, Jaden responded immediately. Gold frowned. Why isn't the boy affected? He would have to figure that out later. For now, he would have to compromise with the mortal. How about this? I'll tell you how many times I have gone back in time, and you let this go. Deal. I've only done it twice. The first time was an accident. The second time was because I was sent. Gold responded. He quickly finished his food afterwards. Are you ready to go? Yeah, Jaden said, also finishing his food. Then let's go, Gold said, starting to stand up. We have to pay. I'm not gonna dine and dash. Gold tilted his head, and then sat back down. Alright, Gold said, before waving over to their waiter. Their waiter walked over. Have you two finished? They asked. Yes, Gold said. Excellent. I'll go grab your bill, the waiter said, before turning to walk away. Wait, Gold called out, before their waiter got too far. The waiter turned back and approached Gold. Is there something else, sir? They asked, and Gold only shook his head before looking the waiter in the eyes. I believe this is on the house, Gold spoke softly. Jaden frowned as he watched the waiter's eyes dilate, and they nodded numbly. This is on the house. The waiter's voice was absent of life. Gold! Jaden admonished. What? Gold's voice was casual. What did you do? Jaden said, pointing at the waiter. Nothing bad, just a little divine influence. Besides, now we don't have to pay. That's not how this works. That's how it works for me. Gold! Jaden admonished again. The deity made a tisk sound in the back of his throat. Fine. The Swede god snapped his fingers, and the waiter returned. Will an alternative method of payment suffice? That depends, the waiter said numbly. I will have to ask the manager. Do it. Ask if gold will work, Gold said, waving away the waiter. The waiter nodded and walked away. Gold turned to Jaden and pointed at another table. Hand me that knife, Gold said, before grabbing his water and tipping it back. Curious as to what Gold's about to do, Jaden complied. Gold dumped the remaining shards of ice into Jaden's glass and held out his hand for the utensil. How squeamish are you around blood? I'm not. Squeamish, that is, Jaden said. Gold nodded, and using the knife, he cut his palm. Gold held his bleeding palm over his glass and let his blood pour into it. Jaden opened his mouth to ask Gold a question, but Gold waved him off. When the bleeding stopped, Gold swirled the rose gold liquid around once before flipping it over. There was a solid thump as a chunk of solid gold fell from the glass. Gold placed it over the check. Now we leave, Gold said, grabbing Jaden's arm before he could protest. The world became a blurred mess as Jaden and Gold suddenly showed up outside. Well, now that that's out of the way, let's go. Gold walked towards the armor, and the metal plates shifted back as the armor returned to its original coloration. The deity stepped into the armor, and the plates shifted back to normal. Gold crouched down a little. Come on, we've wasted enough time here. We shouldn't keep the boss waiting. Jaden let out a small sigh. Alright, he said, before climbing onto Gold's back. Don't lose your food, Gold said, before taking off. The world became a blur of motion. Before returning to normal, they were in a forest. Lush trees covered the sky, and the surrounding plants created a dense wall of vegetation. The plants around them looked exotic and bright, a mixture of foreign and familiar. Some of the flora looked to be native to Earth, while some others looked to be alien. Jaden tried to step off Gold's back, except he fell, as his arms and legs were slightly numb and cold. Gold didn't seem to be affected by the same chill as Jaden, though. Why aren't you cold? Jaden asked, crossing his arms in a vain attempt to preserve his remaining body heat. Armor regulates my body temperature. Also, lightning generation helps. Well, lucky you then, Jaden said dryly. The mortal looked around and noted the strange area. Where are we? A fragment of Eden. Eden, like the garden? Jaden asked. Gold tilted his head in thought. No, and yes, the deity answered. The actual garden was destroyed roughly 20,000 years ago. This is merely a replica of a fragment of the original garden. Jaden looked around for some type of path leading in and out, but found none. Why do I have a feeling I'm not going to find this place on any map? Jaden said dryly. Because you won't. Not unless you know where you're going, Gold said, before walking through the foliage. Now follow me. You don't want to get lost here. Jaden followed the deity through the plants. Jaden zoned out following Gold's, which is why he nearly ran into him when the god stopped suddenly. Why did we stop? Jaden asked. Gold took a deep breath in and a slow breath out. We're here, Gold said, pulling some plants back, allowing Jaden to pass through. It was a clearing, with a single temple in the center. The temple was tall and made out of stone. There was a flight of stairs leading up to the entrance. There didn't seem to be any windows, and there was no real sign of life. Yet the temple seemed to be in perfect condition. Jaden felt a metallic hand on his back, gently pushing him forwards. Come on, Gold said, leading the mortal towards the building. Together, Jaden and Gold walked up the steps and into the temple. And when they entered, the difference between the outside and the inside was as stark as night and day. The interior had pure white walls, with sky blue accents. The floor was lined with a bright red carpet that had some gold accents embroidered into it. Most of the temple had exotic-looking plants lining the sides, with small fountains pouring water into the plants, keeping the dirt a rich, dark, brownish-black color. There was maybe a fourth of the temple dedicated to actual seating, 2 columns of 4 rows of benches. In the front of the pews, 3 shallow steps up, a lectern stood, made from a white wood with gold decorations. Jaden shuddered lightly. The temple was both peaceful and eerie. Gold walked past Jaden, but not before grabbing the mortal's arm and dragging him towards the front. Gold let go of Jaden near the front. Kneel, and keep your head down, Gold said, pushing down on one of Jaden's shoulders. The hybrid complied, even if only to get Gold to stop pushing him. Jaden knelt down on one knee and bowed his head down, placing it on his other knee. He kept his arms down his fists to keep his balance. Gold knelt down the same way in front of Jaden. Now what? Jaden asked. Silence, Gold hissed. I need to concentrate. You'll understand soon enough. Jaden decided to keep his sigh to himself. What was Gold even concentrating on? Well, this is a temple, and a copy of Eden? Unless Gold wasn't concentrating, maybe he was praying. What was he thinking? Of course Gold's praying. But why would a god need to pray anyways? What would a god pray to anyways? Jaden flexed his fists, and odd. The soft texture of the carpet was now grainy, like sand. Jaden opened his eyes and saw that everything around him was gone. He was no longer in the temple, but in a strange-looking desert. Sand stretched out endlessly, with a strange light blue tint. Jaden looked down to brush off the grains of sand still stuck on his fists, and saw that the grains also had the light blue coloration. An electric blue sky stretched out above Jaden. Oddly, there didn't seem to be a sun. And the temperature in this strange place was comfortable, but also absent. It wasn't particularly hot or cold. Jaden looked out in front of him and saw Gold still kneeling. Jaden approached the kneeling deity and opened his mouth to speak, but something cut him off. A faint sound echoed in the distance. Wind chimes? Jaden looked around to find the source of the sound, but found nothing. The sound of wind chimes got louder, and Jaden quickly realized that the sound was coming from above him. Jaden looked up and saw a black dot above him and Gold's. Briefly, he thought it was the sun of this place, but quickly threw that idea out as this dot was getting closer, along with the dinging of wind chimes. Gold? There's a thing in the sky, Jaden said, but Gold didn't respond. As the thing got closer, there was more Jaden could make out. The thing was a creature, with a serpentine-like body, and what appeared to be a mane of hair, and 2 protrusions coming from its head. Horns? Wait. Jaden was coming to a conclusion he wasn't sure he liked. Was this a dragon? But Gold said all the dragons were sealed away. Not that that really mattered at the moment. Going from what Jaden knows about perspective, the dragon was probably massive. And it was coming down quick, and the sound of wind chimes was also getting louder. Jaden hit the back of Gold's armor. Gold, there's a giant fuck you dragon coming down here. But Gold was still unresponsive. The dragon got closer, to the point where Jaden could make out its electric blue scales and jet black underscales. It had 4 massive claws, 2 hair-like whiskers coming out from its snout, 2 sharp black horns with electric blue accents, and a mane of blue hair coming out from the back of its head. Jaden was right before. This thing was massive. It looked like it could constrict around a skyscraper, leaving little to no room for the skyscraper to show. The dragon tilted its head and spiraled around once before returning to its descent. The sound of wind chimes stopped getting louder, even though the dragon was getting closer. The dragon fell down faster and faster, and Jaden gave up on trying to get Gold to help, and took a step back from the god, prepared to run. Jaden saw the dragon get closer, but it appeared to be going in front of Gold and Jaden. Jaden's head tilted down, as the dragon was a few seconds away from hitting the ground. The air grew colder, as Jaden looked at one of the dragon's eyes, only for his gaze to be met with a sharp, electric blue eye staring back at the boy. Everything felt slower, and Jaden noticed the dragon slowly tilt its head, before a loud thud thundered out, as the dragon finally hit the ground. Sand flew out around everywhere, and Jaden shielded his eyes with an arm. The mortal squinted, his eyes open, to see a human-looking silhouette floating in the air. The silhouette shot their arms up, and the sand stopped moving. They then jutted their arms outwards, and the floating sand flew away from the area, revealing a figure. They wore an electric blue tunic hoodie that fell just before their feet, with the hood still up. The hoodie had some black outlines of dragons scattered around. Halfway down the hoodie, around the waist, were slits around the hoodie. They wore black pants and black flat loafers that seemed to be made out of a soft-looking material. They had shoulder-length, wavy black hair, with the bottom half of their hair glowing a faint electric blue color. Their hair swept over to the right side, while the left side was close to being shaven off. Their face was androgynous and statuesque. Soft and sharp features were perfectly scattered on their face. Piercing electric blue eyes stared down at Jaden and Gold, as a perfect smile grew on their face, as Jaden realized that God was staring down at him.